But yeah, thanks for being here. So yeah, why I started a podcast was just because when COVID happened, right? Pandemic. And obviously Australia had, from what I read, a lot more tougher times than we were having apparently. So but yeah, it was one of those things that one of my favorite quotes is most men live lives of quiet desperation. And I always, yeah, and I always felt like, so I just hit my 10th mark of or my 10th year of where I'm working at currently. I work in higher education, and I just hit 36 this year. And, when pandemic hit and life became at a halt, I was like, oh, have I been on autopilot these last few years? And have I been living my life the way I thought I was going to be living? If I reached my goals and I became a real podcast listener back in 2017, 2016 or so. Like I just enjoyed listening to other people and listening to their stories and listening to, wow, how do they get to point A to point B and what obstacles did they meet and what challenges did they have to overcome? And, there was other ways of looking at life other than what was ingrained in me, so to speak, and so that's the reason I was like, maybe if I start a podcast, it would help me, not only get my thoughts out, but meet interesting people, network a little bit, help me with my speaking. And that was the biggest thing. And, at first I just kind of goofed off with it with my friends, it's, hey, let's come over and have a few beers. Let's talk. And, whatever comes up. But it's grown to something different, man. And that was part of the reasons why I started it, though, was just to kind of help me and challenge myself and do something that I think I can never do. And to start something that from the ground up and make something happen out of it. Cause I've never took that chance in life, if that makes any sense at all. So
yeah, no, that makes a whole lot of sense, man. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, man. And I appreciate you being here. I read up on a little bit of your background. I watched your TEDx video and it was good, man. I agreed with a lot of stuff you were saying and I felt a lot of it, man. And I liked it. And I think it resonates with a lot of people, especially if you're very open-minded and you learn to look at life in a different way. Just kind of what I was saying is that, open up your eyes to new ideologies. And, like, for example, you came, from what I know about you, you're a backpacker, now what, a corporate leader?
I was, I ended up in corporate leadership and got kind of spat out of that world.
Uh-oh. Did I lose you? Okay, we're back. I thought I lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Yeah.
I think my internet froze up, but I think we're good now. So, but
so there's been different chapters, man. And look, when I went and got a real job in my early 30s after becoming a father, and I was like, wow, I better get a real job, because I'd been bumming around the world, my whole adult life and living a very colorful, alternative bohemian kind of life. So when I went and got a job and ended up in a shirt and a tie, my friends were like, what are you doing, man? You're wearing a shirt and tie. And I was like, I know, right? But I got to kind of feed these kids. So I ended up in a corporate leadership role, and which I'm very grateful for, because it helps me really understand what I do, what I am passionate about and what I'm not passionate about.
Sure.
And I'm passionate about people and connection and self-improvement. And I'm certainly not passionate about driving net profit growth month on month on month. So that was good. It also led me to my necessary midlife crisis / midlife awakening opportunity in my early 40s. And I lost everything, man. I lost the career, lost the marriage, lost the house, lost everything except my two boys. I've got two, they're now teenage young men, but lost everything except for them. I had them week on, week off in the co-parenting arrangement coming out of the divorce. But that was one of the really, really low points in my life where I needed to reassess everything. And start to repair my relationship with self, which was the first step, because I had subconsciously, unwittingly developed this background belief that I wasn't good enough. There was self-loathing and self-shame, and I kept that secret torture to myself. When you said before that quote about, a lot of men suffer in silence, that wasn't the words that you used. That's what I heard you say. And I did my years, decades of suffering in silence and not sharing my deepest vulnerabilities because of the shame. I was so ashamed and so embarrassed. And I thought I was alone. I thought I was a freak. So I kept it all to myself, and I put on this facade of everything's okay. I've got the corporate job. I'm earning lots of money. I'm flying business class, and I've got a wife and kids and a house. And I'm pretending to have everything that I got sold on this idea that our culture tells us that if you go do these things, you'll be happy, which is not true. Yeah. So I tried that and it didn't work. And then I tried something else and it's working. So that's cool.
Yeah. One thing I've learned with talking with people like yourself and reading their self-improvement or self-help books and listening to other podcasts. And you said it really well that, you thought you were the only one who was just kind of suffering in silence, and that it seems like you're not the only one. That seems like a common theme among everybody. And it's just, and even with myself, I used to think that too, just, I was not good enough. I don't know why I'm here. And, I've talked with other people, and I guess that could be related to imposter syndrome, but it was, and it was one of those things that I've learned though, these past few years that, that's a lot of people in their own head and getting in their own way, that it's not really, you're not by yourself. It's, I guess, what I'm trying to say. And it's how you,
absolutely.
Yeah. And you get those demons and you figure out how to fight them and you overcome those obstacles. And it's wild to me. It blew my mind when I started to realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you add onto that the layer of cultural indoctrination, and especially for men, now I'm going to generalize here. I know there's exceptions to the rule. Sure. And if you are an exception to this rule, I acknowledge you and I hear you and I validate you. Now I'm going to just speak to the generalization so you and I can have a conversation around this, right? Of course. We are culturally indoctrinated as males when we're little. Don't cry. Suck it up, man up, toughen up, harden up, don't show your emotions. So this patriarchal system structure that we're in the States and in Australia is such that as young boys growing up trying to figure out what it is to be a man, in inverted commas, we have to divorce ourselves from that sensitive side, that emotional side, the vulnerability and everything. We lock all of that stuff deep, deep, deep down inside. We still experience it, but we don't share it with the outside world. And for a lot of males, get to the point where they even become unaware of it themselves. They actually detach themselves so successfully from their emotional, sensitive vulnerabilities that they're not even aware that that side of themselves exists anymore. Yeah. So then they end up in a marriage and their partner's saying, why can't you express how you're feeling? Or why can't you communicate with me? Or why can't you, you're an island. You feel like an island. And the blokes there, we call them a bloke here in Australia.
Yeah, I got you.
The blokes there going, what are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't feel anything. I'm just pissed off right now because of blah, blah, blah. Or I just want to switch off and watch the sport and crack a beer. Like, why are you trying to get me to go into this whole world, inner world that I don't even know exists, right? Because they don't know this, but they were told culturally to divorce themselves of that at a very young age. Oh. So there's a lot of reparation work for men, especially. I mean, women talk with each other, right? Women sit down with each other and go, oh my God, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that or blah, blah, blah. And men don't.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, man. Just that, when thinking about my own experiences, that's kind of what it was growing up for me. And that, I was never really taught to, hey, express your feelings. Hey, what are you feeling right now? And, if you were crying, especially around all your friends at school or whatever, it was kind of like, oh, I got to hide this in. I can't let those substances see me hurt or crying. And even not only environmentally or what your parents may ingrain on you, and that it was also in the media too. If you watch all those old like 80s action star movies, and even now that it's always, oh, toughen up, get back out there. You're okay. And even though they're taking, whatever tragedy or trauma or whatever you want to call it that was in their life right there, you see them just putting it back down and shoving it inside and just it builds up and it releases. I remember having a few random outbursts that my parents just thought were temper tantrums, but I thought they were just something deep I was hiding within myself. Could have been. I don't know. I don't really know how to think of it, dude. But you hit it on the head. That's
man. I've always, as an adult, I've always, one of my values is being peaceful. Right. I'm a pacifist. I'm anti-violence. Sure. And so I was trying to identify with that. But then in my past relationships, this one's very different. But in the past relationships, before I kind of was practicing mindfulness and becoming more aware, I'd be peaceful, non-emotional for a long period of time, but I was just pushing it all deep down inside. Right. And then I would explode. Now, I've never been physically violent on a partner. I've never been physically violent on anyone, actually, to be honest, but I've never been physically violent on a partner. But in those few times where I would explode, I scared myself, man. Like I lost my shit. I went crazy. Like I lost it, properly lost it. And this was because I hadn't allowed myself to lose it in little ways immediately as I was feeling it through all the years. I would suppress it. And I think that's what happens with a lot of men. We suppress, suppress, suppress. And then when we do lose it, it's scary, man. And you put a gun into the hand of someone who loses it, and it can be potentially not good.
What's wild is that you just triggered a couple of moments. So I remember in college that, and I don't know if this was just drunken, kind of obviously too much binge drinking or whatever, but moments would happen and, two friends would blow up on each other who were best friends or whatever. But immediately after the fight kind of dialed down and was, we separated everybody. But, that one person would go out and start crying, out of nowhere. And it was like, wow, you went from 0 to a ballistic back down to now you're crying. And like, it was just like so emotional. And I remember, I've even felt it almost at times too. Like you said that, where me and a friend got in a heated argument, and this immediately after, it was just like, wait, why am I so upset right now? Like, what am I feeling? What is this happening? And, and it was never talked about after that, after that one night, and it happened multiple times. It's just forget about it,
Yeah. And it was usually with some alcoholic lubrication, right?
Oh, it always is, man. And it was probably too much alcoholic lubrication. That's probably a lot of the cause of it, but yeah, it was just, and again, it was just the next morning, everyone kind of resets back to 0 and it's kind of forgotten about,
Yeah. So true, man. It's interesting. I've been sitting in men's circle for over 10 years down where we live. I live in a small town on the surf coast, the Great Ocean Road down here. And, everyone surfs and it's a pretty healthy lifestyle. But there's a group of us men and we sit around a fire once a month and we talk about themes that are meaningful to us. And it's not a counseling session. It's not a bitch session where you're just kind of complaining. There's no booze. There's no tobacco. There's just water and conversation around a fire. It's quite beautiful, actually. Anyway, we talk about meaningful stuff and it's just an opportunity to be heard. How you feel about things, what is this like for you? And when I tell other men who come from different demographic to me, that's what we do. They're like, what? You do what? You sit around a fire and talk about your deepest feelings. And I'm like, yeah. And they go, oh my God, that's weird. And I'm like, well, that's what we do. And they say, do you have to talk? If you don't want to talk, do you have to say anything? I said, no, you can just sit there. And then some men who come from very different socioeconomic backgrounds to me, they say, oh, could I come along? I'm like, sure, man, come and sit around the fire with us, And but for a lot of men, the idea of that is just bizarre. They don't even tell their best friends what they're feeling.
Sometimes I wonder now that if that's starting to get more socially acceptable. And, like you said, if you would have said that probably 10, 20 years ago, everyone would be like, what are you doing? But, just to touch on what you just said, though, for example, I just got back from a bachelor party last weekend at the beach. We went on a little golfing trip down there to the beach. And, one night we'd had a couple of beers and we were all sitting out on this deck, at the beach. And we all started having to, and I hope I'm not oversharing or saying anything that they want me to say. I don't think I am, but
yeah.
But, it was us guys, and we all just started talking about random things about my buddy getting married. And then it went into this thing about simulation theory. And then about, what else did we talk about? There were just things about like psychedelic drugs and what's the meaning behind them and would you ever try them? And just, and it was like one of those things that, nobody was holding anybody to a certain degree or to a bar or anything. It was just
no judgment.
Yeah, no judgment. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Speak freely and just, what are your thoughts? And again, if nobody didn't want to say anything, cool. Yeah. But it was so cool, like having that type of conversation just with your boys and with the bros and just hanging out and talking. And no judgment, being free. And it's like, we were having a few beers while we were doing it, but that made it even more exciting because I think it actually opened up a few people. Nobody was like belligerent or anything weird like that. But again, it was like social lubrication. But it was
I reckon you're right. It
was a cool book.
Yeah, I reckon you're right. I think times are changing. And in terms of this becoming more normal, I really think, and I'm aware that there's way more men's mental health conversations going on, and trying to encourage men to open up and connect with their feelings, all this stuff. There's definitely movements in this direction. I'm also aware of echo chambers. So you and I have met each other because we're in this kind of echo chamber together, and that there's a big wide world of people out there who will never listen to this podcast and will never have these conversations. And that's okay too. But I don't think we're just in a confirmation bias echo chamber. I do believe that what you said is true. I think the times are changing, man. And I know that because my clients exist outside of my group of friends. So my group of friends we're all like-minded people, obviously. Sure. But the people that I coach come from very different backgrounds to me, and I know that they're becoming more open to these types of conversations. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for humanity, as crazy as we are. And as I shake my head, man, I really shake my head, especially at the leaders, the politicians, and also culturally what's going on and people shouting at each other. I do shake my head. But at the same time, if you make a concerted effort to go out there and look for positive news, there's a lot of good stuff happening.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's exactly what you surround yourself with. If you choose to look at negative stuff all day, you're just going to feed off that negative energy and that negative comments that you're reading and negative news. And your mind's just going to go in that direction, whether into the positive stuff, I'm not saying you should never read anything negative, but if you just surround yourself with that, there's keyboard warriors who get on Twitter and Facebook and just, their whole day is to sit there and argue about whatever topic it is, just try to win. And it's like you wasted 8 hours just sitting here typing up comments about, random shit. It's like, what were you doing for 8 hours? If you would have put that energy into creating something or going to work or something, doesn't matter.
And you know what I find even above that, to those people, I would ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best ever and 1 being terrible, where would you rate the quality of life?
Yeah.
How happy are you?
Exactly.
Oh, I'm not. So what is the point, man? What is the point? Well, let's get to the big question. What is the meaning of life, dude? Look, I don't know. You get to make that up. But for me, I want to live as enjoyable as possible. And I know pain is inevitable, man. I've had my fair share of it and I will have more. I know pain is a part of life. That's cool. But my general day to day, like my average day, what do I hope for it to be? Well, I hope for it to be as good as possible, man. I want to be as happy as possible. I want to be, as grateful, whatever, like I'm hoping for a good life, not a shit life. And sorry, I hope it's okay to swear on your podcast.
Be yourself, dude. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I'm hoping for as good a life as possible. Now, what do we know from the research? We know from the research that if you spend all day on social media as a keyboard warrior, blah, 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 we know you're having a shit life. Exactly. And if that's what you want, fair play, off you go, you do that. But if you turn around and tell me that you wish your life was better, get off the bloody keyboard.
Yeah, man, you can't do that all day. And, it's easy to blame everybody else for your problems. And then don't complain about, it's their fault for me not being able to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, man, let's take a step back here and let's look about what you're doing. How did you spend your day today? And, you spent arguing with random people on the internet just so you could be right about, I don't know, what's to say, sports game or whatever. Your favorite player. It's just like, healthy, dude.
Hey man, can I tell you a fascinating story? Right?
Yeah, hit me.
This is where the algorithms and reality have something going on. There's something happening, right? Check this out. So what you click on shows up more in your feed, right? Right. So that's the algorithms are just there kind of trying to get your attention. And so the more you click on something, the more it shows up, blah, blah, blah. So I was coaching this client of mine years ago, and he said to me, we both live in the same town. Well, he lives in the city. I live in the town outside the city. It's a small city, not a big city. Anyway, he said to me, man, have you been noticing lately? There's so much more violence and so much more crazy stuff going on in our city. He's going like, I keep seeing more and more people having road rage and getting out of their cars and fighting each other at the traffic lights. And the other day I had this crazy person in the middle of the night come and bang on my door, and she was an ice addict and she was screaming and I had to do a citizen's arrest. And he goes, it's everywhere, man. The city's changing. Right?
Yeah.
Now that was his reality. Like that was real stuff. It wasn't, He wasn't making it up.
Sure.
I live in the same city. I live in a town. I come into the city to work.
Right.
I wasn't seeing any of this, right? And then I had this idea and I said to him, hey, man, show me your social media feeds. I'm just curious. Show me your feeds. And he went on to one of the feeds and he started scrolling. Guess what was in his feed all the way through it?
Negative
All this
stuff.
kind of
Yeah.
negative violence, outbursts, people fighting, people caught on camera, punching each other, and ice addicts and negative and blah, blah, blah. That was all in his feed. I said, dude, look at my social media feed. I've curated this. I created this feed intentionally, and we scrolled through my feed and it was all positive news, things that we're getting right, ways to be better, self-improvement, no violence,
Dude.
no news, none of that stuff. I said, look at my feed. I said, hey, man, I'm curious because the algorithms and reality are kind of mirroring each other. Let's do an experiment. I said, for the next month, only click on things that are positive and just see what happens. So he did for a month. He clicked on things that were positive. I came back to coach him a month later. I said, how's your life? He goes, dude, it's spooky. And I said, what do you mean spooky? No, he goes, no, it's spooky. What's happening? He goes, I'm not seeing as much violence in the real world. I'm not having crazy people come and knock on my door. I'm not seeing as much road rage, right? And I thought that's cool because what we focus on, not just algorithmically, but what we focus on in reality is what we filter and what shows up more for us, right? What you focus on is what you get. What you put out is what you attract. So I'm living this life where I'm focused on, humanity and goodness and doing good work and good people and good conversations and blah, blah, blah. I never see much violence around. I mean, I know it's there.
Yeah.
It's just not in my field of reference. Do you know what I mean?
I know 100%, man. And I totally get that. And it's exactly what, there's another good quote I like. And like you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Right.
Yeah. And so if you're hanging out with people who choose to do violence and have road rage and are going down these roads of drugs and alcohol and, it's just point of no return, all these negative behavioral loops, right? You're going to attract some of that. And I firmly believe that what you're putting out there, you're going to get back, So if you're in there just surrounding yourself with the full negativity all day long, you're just killing yourself and killing everyone around you. So, and it's, and look, I'm glad that guy learned to break that habit because I feel like that would be a really hard habit to break, right? I mean, if you're going down this loop of just looking at negative stuff and that's all your mind is wanting there at that time, like, all right, so how do I start to get out of that? Do you just do it like one step at a time? I mean, break it apart.
So here's a life hack, right? Here's a life hack. Consciously look for and focus on what you want more of to show up in your life.
Yeah.
Consciously look for it. What's an example of this? When I started my coaching career, I went to the Coaching Institute here in Australia and I studied coaching and NLP and human behavior and blah, blah, blah. And I had it in my head that I wanted to be a full-time coach. And, you're there with all these other students and you're looking around and I reckon about 98% of the wannabe coaches never, for whatever reason, never make a full-time successful career out of being a coach, right? And there's 2% that do. And they were all sitting around in the lunch break and they were all talking about how hard it is and they were talking about the struggles and they were all talking about the challenges and they were talking about how they've still got their other jobs and everyone they know that is struggling, blah, blah, blah. I would walk away from those conversations, man, and I would go and get online and I'd look up a successful coach, someone who was absolutely nailing it. And I'd reach out to them and go, hey, I'm aspiring to have a career, set my own practice up as a coach. Do you mind if I have a chat with you and just find out what's working for you? I would focus on the people who were being successful. Why would I want to focus on the stuff that I don't want? If back in the day, I used to work in leadership and I'd have a team. If I came into the business in the morning and the first phone call was an irate, upset customer, and you deal with it and they're upset and they're I'd put down the phone and instead of going, oh no, when it rains, it pours, it's going to be one of those days and bad things come in threes and the rest of the day is going to spiral. It's all going to be a terrible day now, right? Rather than doing that, I'd get off the phone and then I'd pick up the phone and consciously call 3 of my favorite clients out of the blue. Just ring them. Hey, John, it's Jem. How you going? G'day, Jem. I'm good, mate. How are you? I said, yeah, I'm good. Why are you calling? I'm just calling to say g'day, see how you are. Oh, man, I'm great. Thanks for my last holiday, blah, blah, blah. He'd talk to me and I'd hang up the phone. I'd pick up the phone and I'd call another positive person. I'd call 3 positive people. Why? Because I wanted to focus on what I wanted to create more of that day.
That's awesome, dude. I mean, that's awesome. Yeah, if you just change a little bit around those habits and just put it towards positive. I mean, I've read stories of like doctors, and maybe it's because they have to, and they're the outliers in there, but they immediately wake up looking for those bad issues, and that's what they. And I don't know how true that is. I mean, I'm not a doctor, and I don't know really many doctors at all, but that's what they surround themselves with. And I guess maybe that's part of the job where they have to do that, look for the worst thing to happen. But even with my job, I mean. I immediately wake up while I'm eating breakfast or whatever. I mean, because I work in IT, so most of our problems come through via email. And so I start looking, but it's usually like, I can take care of that later. I don't need that right now. I mean, I'm not going to start my day off like that. I'll wait till I get, right now I'm at home, I'm eating my breakfast, I'm getting ready to go. And then when I get to work, I deal with that then. So it's one of those things that's changing those habits and changing these, behavioral positive loops or whatever you want to call them. And
yeah, it is, man. It's changing habits. Recently over the last couple of years, I've been calling it the discipline of a positive perspective.
Okay.
Right. And it's a discipline because it's a discipline. You need to actually, in this moment, go, right now, I'm going to choose what I focus on, right? Sure. And so we know from research that's been conducted and the evidence that's come out of this research that whether you are naturally more negatively wired, so you're naturally more pessimistic, or you're naturally more optimistic, or maybe you're in the middle and you're just a realist and you just try and look at exactly what's going on, regardless of where you're naturally predispositioned, when you activate the discipline of a positive perspective, you get better results. You just do.
That makes sense. Right? Yeah.
So if you're looking at a situation and you're looking at the negatives, this is how we're restricted. This is how we're locked down. This is what we can't do. These are all the things we can't do. If you stay focused on that, now you can look at reality and go, right, these are the things we can't do. Now let's activate the discipline of looking at what is possible. What can we do? What might we be able to do? What creative solutions could exist outside of our current thinking? When we do that discipline, we get better results. Mm-hmm. So if you want to get better results, go to work, man. Don't just kick back and go, life's tough and I can't do anything about it. Focus on the stuff you can do.
That's a good point. A lot of life's problems we make up in our own mind, and they make the situation way worse than what it really is. And, in my experience, I've went in with that attitude and, that insight, like, oh yeah, this is going to be shit. I don't know how this is going to handle. It's going to be ended up bad. But when afterwards, it was really not that bad. And I was like, why did I create all this anxiety and stress myself before this? And now I'm relieved of it, but now I'm wishing, man, I wish I had that 2 hours back where I wasn't sitting there sweating and pacing back and forth and going crazy, man. And I mean, I'm loving your mindset and what you're thinking here, because we're agreeing a lot. I mean, but in the early days, I mean, was this something that you always had, or was this something you've always had to work on to train your mind this way, or was this something like you learned just from life and restructuring anything, or what? Or is it right when you had that midlife crisis when you decided to?
That was certainly a massive turning point. But I wasn't a different person entirely before that. I've always been me. I was just a younger version of me who, thought he knew more than he actually did. I was always alternative, so I always, as soon as I finished high school, I ran, man. I was, I guess if I was to psychoanalyze myself, I was a reaction against my father. I just didn't want to be him. Yeah. And he was very conservative. So I went full punk, man. I was piercing my body and covering myself in tattoos and mohawks and punk life, and squatting in abandoned buildings in London, and barefoot backpacking around Asia for years and years and years, and, doing a heap of drugs and smoking weed. And, I used to look at the man, as in the working man, woman, but back then it was mainly the man. I used to look at that world and go, I am never going to be that. I didn't want to vote. In Australia, voting's compulsory. I managed to skip the vote. It was like skipping going to war. I just didn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find who I wanted to be. I was trying to seek some sense of identity. And I was kind of scrambling around, not knowing what I was doing, but how was I supposed to know? I was a young person, right? Yeah. Anyway, so, I kind of did all that. And if you had have asked me back then, are you open-minded? I would have said, yeah, I'm open-minded, but I wasn't. I thought I was open-minded because I was anti-establishment, but I was very closed-minded in
Had that fixed
my thinking, right?
Sure.
And also what I'd been developing in the background, and we spoke about this earlier, which I wasn't aware of at the time, but I was developing this background belief that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't enough.
Oh.
And that leads to the imposter syndrome and the other stuff. And so, yeah, man, it was in a North American Indian sweat lodge here on Aboriginal traditional lands here in Australia. And I was in a sweat with other men when I had this amazing out-of-body experience. And this was in my early 40s, and had this out-of-body experience and had a realization, wow, I've got a belief that I'm not enough. And that was the reason for so much of my deep anxiety and vulnerability and shame. And so then I had this turning point night and a very prophetic dream. And then I lost my job, and then I lost my marriage, and then I lost my house. And then that was the midlife crisis / opportunity awakening. And I went to work on myself, man. I read some books on how we can change our beliefs, the neurology behind that. And it's rudimentary, man. There's no magic pill. You don't just get to take the blue pill and then all of a sudden everything's fixed. You got to go to work on yourself, because I'd spent 40 years wiring these beliefs that I wasn't enough. So I had to spend some concerted effort and time into rewiring new functional beliefs, i.e., I am enough just the way I am. And I do deserve success and happiness and love and all the good stuff, right? So I went to work on myself, man. It was boring, and I rolled my sleeves up, and every single day out loud, many, many, many times a day, I would say my affirmations out loud. And I started practicing self-love and self-acceptance, and I went on a new path. And after I didn't even believe it to begin with. I was saying out loud, I'm good enough just the way I am. And then I'd be saying, oh, that's a crock of shit, man. I don't believe that, But I'd read the books, and I was determined, man. My life had gone to pieces. And I looked at my two boys who were quite young then. They were 8 and 6 years old. And I looked at these two young boys and I went, Jem, do it for them, man.
Sure.
Sort your shit out for them, because they deserve a dad who at least likes himself, So I did, man. I went to work, and it works. It works. I believe I'm good enough now, and my life's amazing, and I do amazing work, and my kids are 18 and 16, and we've got great relationships, and I'm in a beautiful relationship with a stunning woman who absolutely adores me, and her two children, and we're blended, and and I love myself, and life's a lot better like this.
Can we go back and talk about that out-of-body experience you had?
Yeah, sure, man.
Yeah, so I've had a couple people talk about an out-of-body experience, and how they almost said it was almost a near-death experience. That was the way they put it. And I don't know if yours is like that, but it was just, I don't know. I guess I wanted you to just explain it more about what it was. Uh-oh, did I lose you?
I don't know if you can still hear me, but you've frozen. Oh, there you are.
There you go. I don't know. I think my internet connection's going in and out tonight for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yep.
But
yeah, man, I can talk about the out of body experience.
Yeah.
That particular one, which was completely drug free. It was just through ritual and heat. I don't know if you've ever been in a sweat lodge before, but they get super, super hot, and through mantra repetition, so that one didn't feel like near death. It just felt like I was flying around in the universe, and I was 5 years old again. I'd gone back to being a 5-year-old boy. I remember as I was floating around without a body, feeling like I was 5. And for me, that was an important age, because that was the last age of innocence.
Sure.
When I was 6, my father lost his temper and beat me up, threw me around the room, and scared the bejesus out of me. And that was my loss of innocence. That's when I first, at the time I wasn't aware of this, but I look back now and I go, wow, that's probably when I first started to think I'm not good enough, because I wasn't good enough for my dad to love me, to not hurt me, right? So I went back to 5, which was the age of innocence. But I have had an out-of-body experience that was much more like near death, scary as hell. But that was with DMT. I don't know if you've heard of DMT.
I have, and I've always been interested in that, based on what other people have said and talked about, and just that's all I've got from it.
Yeah, first time I had that, the transition I smoked it as a powder, organic DMT. I was in the Himalaya in India, and luckily the situation was perfect. There was the appropriate amount of reverence, i.e., we took it, for the seriousness and the respect of what it is. It wasn't recreational. We weren't at an outdoor dance party.
Right.
It was beautiful and held, and I had someone holding space for me, and we did it properly. But the speed of transition from the moment that you ingest it to the moment that you are out the other side is rapid. Like, oh, here we go. And the change of perceptive state, the change of the neurology is violent. It's scary. It's really scary, man. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And it's like, whoa, hold on. And then buff. And I think this is my experience, and I was ready for it at the time. I was in my late 20s and I'd done a lot of psychedelic exploration. If you can remember to take a breath and surrender, like properly surrender, then you get released through to the other side. I call it the other side because this space that you go to, it's completely peaceful. There's no up or down. There's no, you're kind of floating in this beautiful dimension.
Yeah.
This is the experience of it. I don't know exactly what's happening.
That's exactly what I've heard. It's like open up your mind to another dimension, and that
it's completely, and apparently
worse.
So if you fight it, you get stuck in. If you fight it, you get stuck in the transition, the tunnel of transition. You imagine those sci-fi films where they go to light speed and they go through a wormhole.
Yeah, that's exactly
the wormhole's the transition bit.
Right.
If you fight it, you get stuck in that wormhole, man, and it's not nice. But if you surrender and breathe, you come out into this other dimension, which is really quite beautiful. And apparently, from what I've read, DMT it is an organic compound that exists in nature. And it gets released in our brains twice, in the process of birth and in the process of death.
Correct. So
it's the neurological state that you're in through birth and death. It's quite stunning. I don't recommend it for people who are psychologically volatile. Don't go there. You'll freak yourself out. Yeah. But if you feel that you're psychologically quite stable and, if you feel okay and you feel like you know how to surrender to an experience, then try it out, man. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I've never had the opportunity to do any psychedelics, or I guess what I'm trying to say is that, it's one of those things that I've always was scared of them. And because it was always that, if you do drugs, if you do anything like that, you are a loser. You shouldn't do that. Right. But it's like now, like we were talking about how mental health is coming more for men to talk about, that it's almost psychedelics are starting to become that way too. And like, I'm not talking about all of them, but there's people like, like Joe Rogan talks about his experiences with DMT, and there's other famous people who are now, and they've said exactly what you are saying too. And it's just opening yourself up, and you're fighting your inner demons and learning to actually feel yourself in a different way and learn or look at life in a different way too. And there was another comedian I was listening to, and he just did his ayahuasca, or he did ayahuasca. Yeah, and he was talking about his whole experience with it too. And he said the exact same thing, that if you see like rainbows and unicorns and stuff on this one side, like you want to go over there, but you're supposed to go to the dark side. And that's when you really, truly release yourself and you learn to come out on the other side. But they all talk about, most of them have talked about like how much better they felt on the other end and how much more, I guess, connected with life and other human beings are with, And
it gives you perspective, man.
Yeah, I'm not advocating like everybody should go do drugs, but I mean, I just think that, other people, like you said, talked about it's a key to opening up the brain to another dimension. And, we don't have to go down this road, but it makes me curious about things, I guess, is what I'm really trying to say. And what I would like to figure out. And like, cause like yourself, who, you said you surrendered to the experiences and you came out okay on the other side, and it's like,
completely, man. But one of the keys for me was to learn how to surrender.
Yeah.
And the word surrender to us, for a lot of people, surrender means giving up or losing or letting the other person beat you or blah, blah. That's not the surrender I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about acceptance of what is. I'm talking about surrendering to what is. There's so much stuff that's beyond our control. And when you try and control something that's out of your control, you're wasting your energy to begin with. It creates suffering because you're feeling like it shouldn't be the way it is, but you can't change it, but you keep trying to change it. So you're fighting a losing battle. That's the stuff I'm talking about surrendering to. And when you take a psychedelic or a mind-altering substance, your mind is going to alter whether you like it or not, man. And you can fight that shit. And if you do, you're in for a hell ride.
Yeah.
But when you surrender to it and just sit back and see what happens, it can be quite remarkable.
Yeah. Do you know who Stephen King is? Obviously, probably.
Stephen
Writer?
King, yeah. Yes, yeah.
I mean, I forgot where he said it at, but he talked about, he wrote Cujo completely on cocaine and alcohol.
Right.
And so I don't know if you could say that he was surrendering to it or whatever, but I think he was actually using it, this is maybe my take on it, my perspective, to actually put his mind into a different sphere, atmosphere, whatever you want to say. And then that was how his creativity came out in writing his books.
Maybe he was just addicted to them both and loved it.
That was the excuse for doing it. I don't know, but
who knows, man? Who knows? But look, I think that just the pure fact that we can alter our state of perception, right? Whether it's with a plant, whether it's with smoking marijuana, or whether it's with taking DMT, or whether it's even through something that's been created in a lab. The fact that we can change our perception enlightens us to the fact that our normal resting state is just a perception. Mm-hmm. It's not reality. It's just our perception of what's going on. And that's up for grabs, man, because your state of mind is different to mine. So your perception of reality has got to be slightly different to mine. Sure. And so because I now know that my version of reality is just a version, right? Then I can loosen my grip a little bit and go, well, who am I to say that my way of looking at the world is better or right, or like I'm right and you're wrong? Who am I to say that? That does not make sense. It's ridiculous, because my state of reality is just my perception, and my perception is up for grabs anyway. It can change. And how can my version of reality be any more valid than yours? That doesn't make sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a great point. Even if you're not taking any substances or anything, but just in the environment we grow up in. I mean, you grew up half a world away and I'm on the other side of the country, and just we both grew up with different experiences in life, and different things. But exactly, I agree 100% with what you're saying, that just because you experience one thing and I haven't, I'm not ultimately just going to disagree with you just because I've never seen that before or never heard that before. But it's one of those things like you were talking about, being open-minded rather than having that fixed mindset. And and we don't have to agree on everything, but it's not one of these things where I'm just going to get on my keyboard and like we were talking about earlier.
Ripping
it apart, dude. I mean, it's like you said, it's not healthy. I mean, there's no reason why two people can't sit around and debate or have a conversation or have a topic about one experience, one topic over the other without a whole feud happening. Whether I mean, it's whether whether it's substances or. I mean, we were just talking about psychedelics, and this, I've never done them before, and you have, and I was very curious on what your perception was like on it. Where other, I know other people who are like, no, drugs, nope, never, no, and just immediately just label you as a terrible person for doing it. And I used to think that too, that if you did the stuff like that, you were a loser, like I said. But not that way, man. It's cool to have these conversations and sit here and like, oh wow, that's what he experienced. That's so awesome. I mean, the way you're talking about it's so cool, and it's just I don't understand why. That's what causes so much conflict in this world, I guess, is that
it's crazy, man. And imagine if you could take what you just said. Imagine if you could apply that to the next level, where just say you were pro-choice and someone was pro-life, right? And you met them. Imagine if you could sit down and have a conversation about that without ranting and raving and getting defensive and getting aggressive and getting angry and getting all this stuff. Imagine if you could just sit down like two people and perhaps start with something that we've got in common. Like, perhaps we could start with something that we both have in common. Wow, you feel the pain of loss. So do I. When a loved one dies, you grieve. Me too. Oh, you have kids. I have kids. You care about them. Me too. Oh, wow. Look, if we cut your skin here and we cut your skin there, we've got the same colored blood. Wow. man. You need food and shelter. So do I. You need love and connection. So do I. Let's start there. All right. Now, when we go to explore the differences, do you know where I'm going to start in that conversation with you? I'm going to lean into you and go, Chris, I see it really differently to you. But before I share with you how I see it, I want to try and understand your point of view, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want to lean into this conversation. Imagine if two people were talking about pro-life, pro-choice, and could have a conversation like that about it. Now, it doesn't mean at the end they're going to agree. That's not what's important, but at least they're going to have a conversation where they've opened their minds a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah, you said that beautifully, dude. That's the whole point. Like, just because two people disagree on something doesn't mean they have to become enemies and, want to set the world on fire, dude. I mean, that's, you want to have people who disagree with you in your life or not think the same thing you do. And it makes you a better person, so to speak, that, you can do exactly what you said. You can sit down and have a small debate and good conversation with somebody and come out on the other end. And I have a good friend at my gym, she'll randomly text me about like, what you just said, like Roe v. Wade just got overturned over here. Like, hey, what were your thoughts on that? And then, we tell her and I'll tell my piece, she tells her piece, and we go on. And it's cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes we agree and sometimes we're kind of in the middle. Like, recently I asked her, she asked me about precognition, if I believe in, predicting the future. Then I came up with, well, what do you think about manifestation? And it was cool. And like, it was, and I said, well, the way she put it, once she said, well, I said, well, ain't that the same thing, the way you're putting it? And she went, no. And she got out through text too. So they may not have been that way, but again, we're still friends. We just did the workout together. So it's a beautiful thing to do that. It's fun,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. And more than even just being fun, I think that as communities, we can come up with better solutions to the bigger problems when we can communicate across diversity.
Great point.
Like if we just take, I was just saying this in a conversation earlier this morning, if we take a group of people who are all very similar, same background, same demographics, same religion, same ideas, same, and we ask them to solve a big problem, the bandwidth of creative possibility that they've got access to is very narrow.
Exactly.
But if we put into that same room a group of people super beautifully diverse, different upbringings, different religions, different cultures, different foods, different everything, right? And we say, right, now communicate and come up with the bandwidth of creative possibility is much broader. There's a much better chance of us coming up with a really, really genius solution to that problem, i.e. global warming or pandemics or inequality, right? You leave it up to a bunch of white middle-class older males, they're not going to come up with really great solutions.
Yeah, I mean, we need that in life. Just people from all different perspectives. And you said that again beautifully too, that we wouldn't be here today having this conversation over Zoom if we didn't have people who thought outside the box and thought differently and weren't afraid to take chances and, come up with those ideas without, I don't know who came up with the idea of Zoom or talking on the phone or whatever, but the first person who probably ever said that was probably like, talk through a screen on a computer. What the hell are you thinking about, bro? That could never happen. But it's so awesome that, and it still blows my mind that we're able to do this today and that we get on here and I'm having this great conversation with you. And, and when I first, we just exchanged emails and I've said it plenty of time on here before, but it's like, damn, without this technology and not knowing how this is going to go or anything, we're able to do this today and it's coming out beautifully, and it's just like, if more people just thought and had that type of mindset and this self-improvement and positivity and working for a better purpose in life rather than just, I hate everything, everything. Yeah, dude. I mean, and this fulfillment with that, there's no joy in that, dude. There's no joy.
Yeah.
In life, man.
Yeah. And, you can have an open mind too, without having to give up your sense of self or your values. Yeah. You can still be you. You can still live to your core values and have an open mind and allow others to be different from you. We're so fear-driven as a species. And I get that because, we've, through the evolution of us as a species, we came off the savanna plains where life was really dangerous, and through all of the tens of thousands of years of us figuring out how to survive as a species, we needed to have that fear receptor switched right on, But despite what mainstream news would have us believe, we're actually living in the safest time ever for humans.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, if you get an infection, you're probably not going to die from it. I mean,
right.
Get by a bus, your chances are better. You're going to live.
Yeah, and the suburb next to you, as in the suburb next to you, you don't have to be waiting for that whole suburb to come in and kill you all and take all your food and water.
Right. Yeah.
So we are actually living in safer times than ever before, but the wiring, the old reptilian brain wiring, is hundreds of thousands of years old. And so that fear receptor is right on. And now it's coming out you're on Twitter saying this, and I'm opposed to that. And so the fear receptor's on, and I'm going to attack and defend. And it's like, hey, people, you're not actually helping the greater cause of humanity. You're not actually improving the situation right now. Yeah. Now, I know you're shouting really loudly at each other and you're trying to cancel each other, but that's not helping the cause, the bigger cause, right? The cause of humanity. So anyway, it's interesting to watch, isn't it, man?
Yeah, Douglas, is it Douglas Murray or Murphy? He's got a take on that where he actually talks about where the fall of civilization with like Rome and Greece, and I can't remember if there was another one or not, but it was actually when they got too equated with having no rules and fighting each other, and that was the fall of their civilizations.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like, wow, where our country is going right now, or maybe even the world. Wow, that's exactly what seems to be the direction we're heading in, and I hope not. I hope that's wrong, but
yeah, I'll tell you what, man. Sitting over here on the other side of the world, and look, I think the whole Western political structure is not working. However, sitting over here from the safety of Australia and looking at what's going on over there for you guys, it's different when I speak with you, Chris, and look, I feel like I'm sitting in your living room with you, man, and we can, but looking at America from the outside point of view in terms of listening to podcasts and watching the news, which I don't watch very much of, but I hear what's going on. It's like, whoa, is that really happening? The States feels like it's going to implode. It's like, what is going on over there, man?
Somebody called it a reality show. We have movie stars becoming our presidents now and then, and I don't know what your political background is, but now we have one that, feels like he's barely hanging on to life,
Yeah, I know. And the most watched media is a movie star and his movie star wife who are fighting in a public court.
Yeah.
And everyone, like, it gets millions and millions and millions of views. And I'm like, wow, that's really that important to you all, not you, but to people who watch it, and I'm like, wow, and it's upsetting, man. Like watching the number of mass shootings.
Yeah,
it's so upsetting, and I don't even live there. I mean, you guys are living there, and it's like, wow, it's it's crazy times, and even the politicians who run Australia too leave a lot to be desired. And it's if I focused on that stuff, that's why I don't watch the news. I haven't watched mainstream news for 20 years. And I'm still here. Guess what? You don't need it. But I don't. I subscribe to positive news, real news, not just fluffy fairies and rainbows news, like actual news of stuff that's going on. But I want to focus on the positive stuff that humans are doing as well, because that makes my life more enjoyable,
Yeah, for sure, man. I know we're getting a little short on time here, but didn't you just publish a book and everything?
Yeah. The book got published in November. The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men. I've just got to quickly tell you a funny story for this book, right? My publisher rings me up one day, months ago. She's this beautiful Irish woman and, superwoman. She's got 6 kids and 3 publishing firms. And anyway, shout out to you, Karen McDermott. She's awesome. She rings me up on the phone one day and she's talking to me like this, telling me all the different things that are happening. And then she says to me, and your book's been chosen to go into a gift hamper it's called the Hollywood Swag Bag, and it goes to all the Oscar nominees before the Oscars. And she kept talking about something else. And I said, whoa, Karen, hang on. What did you just say? She goes, what bit? And I said, you said something about my book going in a swag bag to the Oscar nominees. And she goes, yeah, that's right. It's going in a gift hamper. It'll get delivered to all the Oscar nominees the week before the Oscars. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's so cool, right? Yeah. So anyway, my book goes in this hamper and it gets delivered to all the Oscar nominees' homes. a week before the Oscars. And I'm going, right, I'm going to manifest, I'm going to visualize one of them reads my book and likes it and tweets on it, right? Something, right? And I'm like, who do I pick? Because I don't really know them and know much about them. And I just, for some reason, I picked Will Smith. I went, Will Smith. He picks up my book, he reads my book, he loves it, right?
Yeah.
And I said to my partner, I said, I'm doing this visualization that Will Smith's wife, I didn't even know what her name was. Will Smith's wife picks up my book, and my partner goes, oh, you mean Jada Pinkett Smith? And I'm like, is that his wife? And she goes, yeah. I mean, that's how much I don't know about Hollywood, right? And I went, yeah, Jada Pinkett Smith. She picks up the book, she likes it, she gives it to him, he reads it. So I'm visualizing this all the way up to the Oscars.
Sure.
And then the Oscars happened.
Oh no! And then
I was just like, oh no, oh no. And a friend of mine said to me the next day, joking, making a joke, right? This is a joke. Yeah. He rang me up and he goes, man, imagine if he had have gone up and slapped Chris with a copy of your book. The book is called The Art of Conscious Communication for Thoughtful Men. So then I thought, wow, well, this manifestation isn't going to happen. Will's going to be in a world of pain right now and kind of trying to reassess. And my partner said to me, no, I think even maybe when the dust settles even more, he might find that book in his living room and read it. I haven't heard from you yet, Will, dude. If you see that book lying around in your home, man, read it. Let me know what you think of it. I'd love to know what you think of it.
Sure, man. Get it to number one for sure for that way.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's take this home on that. That was a good one right there. If people want to find you, find the book and all that good stuff, how do they do that?
They can find the book anywhere where you buy books, Amazon.com or anywhere else. You can find me on my website, jemfuller.com, JEMFULLER.com. I'm on all the social media stuff as Jem Fuller. Yeah, man, reach out. I'm super accessible and I love talking about cool stuff. And yeah, reach out.
Jim, you're a badass dude, man. I appreciate you being here.
Awesome.
Yeah, all right, we're out of here, folks. Be good to yourselves.